Okay, let's go ahead and get going. I want to thank everyone for attending our second attempt at this part two of what's new in 2011. The previous scheduled attempt, we had some audio difficulties from the folks at Citrix that provide the GoToWebinar utility, and we were unable to overcome that. Just to double check everyone's audio at this point, if you could please raise your hands to show that we have audio. As long as a few of you have raised, I'll assume that everyone has audio at this point. Okay, I see a couple of you. Okay, very good. We'll go ahead and get going. The intention of these webinars, and this is a four-part series, we've kind of looked at the customer base and said, you know, it's not easy to get up to date and what's really in the 2011 releases. So we've done the four-part series to kind of train you on different areas within the software. And I've made the assumption in showing what I'm going to show today that maybe there's areas in some of these features that you've never touched before anyhow. So I'm probably going to go a little deeper into some of these 2011 features than maybe you've seen before because maybe you haven't used them. First of all, let's take a look at the agenda and what I want to cover today. It's not a lot of different topics, but we're going to dig right into them. On the administration side, I want to talk to you a little bit about the background downloader, something that was added in 2011 that may be annoying for some folks. You're not really sure where it came from, how to turn it on and off. I also want to talk about some changes to SolidWorks RX, which is a utility for capturing problems, diagnosing issues with your machine, and a new benchmarking utility which is in there. Then I want to go into some of the what's new in 2011 enhancements for assemblies. There's 3 new assembly features that have been added. I want to go through those in depth, so show you how those will work. Assembly visualization was added in a previous release. However, they've continued to enhance it in 2011. I want to go through really all the functions associated with assembly visualization to maybe get you a comfort level of what it does and what you can use it for. We're going to go through de-feature as it relates to assemblies. Nate, a few weeks ago, did de-featuring of parts. We're going to talk about de-featuring of assemblies. We're also going to go to the assembly expert and take a look at the new rebuild report that is available through them. Talk about some changes to Speedback, how to flip between Speedback and non-Speedback. And then to finish things off today, I want to, now that SolidWorks has finally focused themselves on how they're going to deal with appearances and model display, and they've integrated PhotoView 360 now into the SolidWorks interface, I wanted to take you through all of that to get a general understanding of really what we're to expect in the future. I think they finally settled on something. Let's start with the background downloader for SolidWorks. Excuse me. In 2011, they added this background downloader as a way of being able to download newer service packs behind the scenes. The user is able to select the download location, how often or if it checks for updates, whether it automatically downloads it, but it also gives the ability to pause and cancel a download midstream. Okay, I'm going to show you a little bit of this. Now, I couldn't just show you my installation manager, so I'll just get some screenshots here showing you how I turned it on. It is on by default as long as you're not doing an administrative image. Now, in the installation manager, you'll see a section called Download Options. If I hit the little change next to the pencil there, that brings me to this screen that you're seeing currently. At the very bottom, there's 2 options. Use the background downloader for future service packs, or use background downloader for this download. For future service packs, I'm going to talk about what it actually does. It runs as a service. But if you want to use it for this download, it gives you the added ability to restart in the middle of the download. something that was kind of a problem before. If your download failed, the communication failed, you didn't quite have a way of restarting it properly and getting what you need. So that's how it's turned on. Let's talk about some of the background to it. For it to work, it actually uses two different services on your computer. You're going to see a service called SLDBGDWLD.exe, which is SolidWorks Background Download for short. It is a 32-bit service. But what SolidWorks really did is they took advantage of another service from Windows, which is called BITS, or Background Intelligent Transfer Service. If that service is not running, your background downloader will not run. It's a Windows native service, but here's what it kind of brings to the table. It allows you to transfer files in the foreground or in the background, in other words, with some sort of interface or behind the scenes. It will help to regulate the responsiveness of other applications that are using the network. In other words, it will speed up and slow down and kind of use the bandwidth so it doesn't affect other applications that may be doing work. And then, most importantly, in my opinion, is automatically resuming the file transfers after disconnects and computer restarts. You can let it start to download. At the end of the day, you shut your computer down. It comes in the next day. It can restart that download and continue to bring down the files. Now, a couple things to note. It's not installed by default with an admin image. Obviously, the way admin images are created, that's one reason. And it does not download early visibility service packs. Unless it's a released service pack, it won't be seen as a downloaded option. So let me take you through the background downloader. Now, in my Windows interface on the bottom right hand corner, you'll see a SolidWorks icon running. That is the background downloader. If you right-click on the background downloader, that's where you get all your options associated with that. If I select Change Download Settings, I can tell it how often it's able to check, every X number of days, once a week, once a month. And then I also can tell it where to download the files once it gets it. Okay. Also in here is the ability to pause, cancel, disable. If you disable, you'll have to go back through your control panel to turn it back on. So it's a little bit harder once you disable it. It really doesn't take a lot of overhead. It kind of works in the background, so there's really not a lot of concern in there. Okay, so that's the background downloader. Let's take a look at some changes in SolidWorks RX. SolidWorks RX has been around for quite a while. It will do system diagnostics, cleanup, and problem reporting. It'll tell you whether your graphics card bad, or how your toolbox is set up. It will help you to create video and gather up files to send to us and to SolidWorks. Now, what they've done in 2011 is they've added video card diagnostics based upon the system and graphics card combinations. Now, we all know, anybody who's had any graphics card issues knows that when we go to look for a certified driver, we want to match it up with the system that the video card is placed in. So we go out to the website, we pick the Dell system, we pick the card, and then we get the certified driver for the system and card. I'm going to show you what they did with RX to bring that kind of forward. The problem capture screen has been changed quite a bit as far as usability and process. It's all kind of in one screen now. It asks a lot less questions. I'm going to take you through just a little bit of that. And then they've added something really neat, is a way to compare your computer to everyone else's. There's some hardware benchmarks out there. So if you really think your system's running slower than somebody else's and you really think it should be running faster, I'm going to show you how to get to those benchmarks. So SolidWorks RX can be found under all programs. We'll take you right down to SolidWorks, SolidWorks Tools, and we can find SolidWorks RX here. Now you'll notice on the main page there's really hyperlinks to all the other tabs that exist. I talked a little bit about diagnostics. I want to take you right to that page because one of the new diagnostics in 2011 is the status for your driver for your video card, and it was able to give a status before, but now it's able to actually come up with the system manufacturer, system model, and driver and model now to tell you if yes, you've got a certified driver or no, you do not. It does this using some other tools that I'll explain here in a moment. Now if I go to there's another tab kind of off to the right here, you can hardly see, it's called add-ins. Under add-ins, this is where you'll find the new benchmark testing. If you want to take a look at how other people scored, it will take 30 or so minutes to run. You just hit start benchmark, hit start here, it will launch SolidWorks, it will start creating files and checking out your video card. I encourage you to take a look at how your computer stacks up. And then the last change in 2011 that I want to point out is the workflow for the problem capture. It used to be multiple screens, and they kind of forced your way, the way they wanted things described and so on. Now we just come right under problem capture. We select describe the problem. It automatically goes and tries to retrieve system information. I'm just going to cancel that for a moment. A brief summary of the issue. Now they've also titled some of the pull-down menus to the areas that we would submit within SolidWorks. So if it's a dimension problem, I can get to some of the things related to dimensions. Okay, you also have the option to check the knowledge base for an answer. I encourage you to select the proper impact level. So if it is a critical problem, we understand that. But once I capture the problem here, and it does require me to put in some data, let's see here if that's enough for it. There is the record video option, which will automatically launch SolidWorks, record the video, and save the video out. And then down here, I can add other files to the package, and then I can zip them up and email them, all in one nice little workflow now in 2011. So if you're using this, it may become a little bit easier to use as you go forward. Okay, let's keep moving on here. A little bit about that graphics card check. I do want you to know that that is a communication using the SolidWorks is sending data to their own servers. It uses the Windows management instrumentation. You kind of saw that when I opened up RX, that it popped up another screen. It just goes in there and gathers all of your computer information to identify what type of computer it is and what kind of video card it is. And it is able to do those matches based upon what version of Windows, what version of the computer and card. So something to be aware of. Some new assembly enhancements in 2011. Assembly feature enhancements. We can add fillets, chamfers, and weld beads inside the assembly. Now we do have the choice, like we do with this other assembly features, to propagate those features down to the part level. The fillets and chamfers are pretty cut and dry, but when you get the weld beads, there are a few options that are quite unique to weld beads. So let's go show that real quick.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy. Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy.
Hello? Okay, looks like we have audio at this point. For those of you who can hear me, raise your hands. I apologize. Something I think... okay, good. We're back. We didn't lose too many people here. Okay. At this point, it looks like everyone kind of saw me do the chamfers here. We'll go ahead and continue at this point. The chamfers actually show up as an assembly feature. So they'll show up after the mates in the feature tree. What you want to be concerned about is mating to those assembly features. Okay, as we always are with assembly features, they're time dependent. SolidWorks actually recommends that you do not mate to time-dependent features, so please do be aware of that. Let's take a look at the weld features. If I go to my assembly features, we do have a new option for weld bead in 2011. What it does is it's able to distinguish by the selection of faces a weld path. That path does not have to be linear. It can be follow around some circular edges or so on. But we need to select faces. In this case, it's very simple. I select the two faces. And this pink outline that you see here shows me where this weld path is going to be. Now, we can specify the size of the bead that we're going to use. Now, is it on both sides of the selection? In other words, if there was another gap over here, would it try to weld on the other side of the gap? Maybe you had a V-groove on both sides. Okay. Does it tangent propagate if I had other surfaces? In this case, it does not. We can actually define the weld symbol, the same symbol you would use in a SolidWorks drawing, okay, with the same methods. Notice, let me go back in there, notice it does actually pull some of the parameters from the previous window. Okay. We can specify a from to length, which is kind of neat. So if I wanted to check the box for from to length, I can now drag the arrows to change the length, or I can specify a value. So it basically recognizes the length of the edge, and you can use a value to come off that edge. And if you wanted to do an intermittent weld, we have some parameters as far as weld length and the gap between them. And you can see the preview is very nice at giving you an idea of what's going on here. Okay. The result here, let's go ahead and just accept this, is not actually a solid model like we've been used to creating welds inside the assembly level previously. It's actually just a surface representation of a weld. If I were to do a cross section at this point and go right through one of those weld areas, you'll notice that it's really just a surface. It's there to represent where the weld is going to be. But here's where the functionality takes a little bit different turn. SolidWorks is able to calculate a little bit more information as it relates to these welds. You're going to see a weld folder in the feature tree. If I expand that weld folder, it shows me any weld features that I've applied. Now I've applied just the 5mm weld. If I expand that, there's the weld bead, the single bead I've applied. Now if I right click on that bead, I can go back to edit the feature and change and add anything else I want. Okay, just going back to the original feature. However, if I were to right click on the folder that contains the weld and go to properties, here's where I get kind of some extended functionality in 2011. First of all, I can specify weld material, and that's just going to be a typed in value. There is no link to the database here. I kind of wish they would have done that, but probably didn't make it. The type of welding process that you're using, again, typable field. The weld mass per unit length. Let's say per unit length it's 1.75 grams. The welding cost per unit mass. Let's say it costs us $1.25 for every gram. Now the welding time per unit length. Let's say it takes us 5 seconds to weld, and we have to make 2 passes each time. And you're able to get a total welding time for a couple parts like this. So we're looking at 199.65 seconds to weld this. Now this information can go into the mass properties of the assembly, and we can get an overall weight of an assembly with welds. Okay, so we're able to go quite a distance with what they've added. Okay, so those are the new assembly features in 2011. Hopefully that was something new for you here. Assembly visualization. I'm going to actually lower everybody's hands here. How many of you have actually used in any shape or form assembly visualization? Let's see a show of hands here. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands go up, so I'm assuming that nobody has used. Oh, we got one. Okay, Stephen. So very few of you have used assembly visualization. I kind of struggled when this tool came out, finding a proper usage for it. But I wanted to take you through all the ins and outs for visualization, maybe give you some tools to bring to the table with it. First of all, in 2011, they've added some more complex sorting scenario, ability to sort on multiple columns and set the order for the sort, and then some additional display and save options to save out what you've done. So let's go to SolidWorks for a moment, and let's just open an assembly. In my opinion, this tool is best used on a larger assembly where you don't really know all the information about all the files. You need a way of sorting through and looking at all the data that exists within each of those files. Now, assembly visualization is found under the Tools menu. It'll be like 3/4 of the way down. You'll see the little assembly symbol with the bars next to it here. Now, when I launch assembly visualization, it creates its own tab next to the series of tabs we always use, next to actually our model display or display manager. And it lists all the files that exist within that assembly and kind of a bar showing us maybe different colors of those based upon what we're looking at here. Now right now it's providing me the quantity and the mass. These are just column headers that if I were to click on them, it will sort based upon the mass or on the quantity. Now if I click the slider bar here off to the left, you can see that it actually provides me with some colors to show me in the graphics area what parts are on which end of the spectrum as it relates to, in this case, quantity. Let's do this for mass. It will make a little bit more sense. So anything closer to the red that's a reddish color is on the lighter end of mass in this assembly. Anything in the blue is on the heavier end. And you can see probably got some unit problems. I don't know, that seems a little bit heavy in this case, but you can use this to kind of look at information. Now if I use this arrow off to the right, I can bring in other things like volume, surface area, total weight. I can come in here and grab, let's say, material. Okay, some of them have materials in this case, some don't. This is a great way of visualizing which components need things filled out as well. You can see material not specified on several. We got plain carbon steel. Let's see what else we got in here. Densities, material descriptions. So I got descriptions of parts. Here's now's everything on description. And again, all it's doing is color coding based upon the sorting that you're doing. Okay, now let's go back to mass just for a moment here. Off to the left, we have some other options that we can use here. First of all, if I wanted to add other colors to the system here, maybe everything kind of in the middle of the mass range, I want to be a different color. I just click next to where the sliders would be and pick a color that I want to use. Okay, now it provides me a color, and I can actually use the slider to specify, exactly where that needs to be. And now everything that is in that range will now show up with that particular color. There's a question on the GoToWebinar, is the mass driven from the part materials? Yes. The mass is coming from the individual parts. It's able to grab those mass properties and kind of bring those forward. Now here's another thing that you may want to use this for. There's a filter at the top that we're used to having a filter. If I want to type in things like indicator, it will filter everything in the graphics area for those values. But there's also another way to filter. There's actually rollback bars at the top and bottom of the assembly visualization tree. So if I were to take this rollback bar, I'm going to get everything kind of in the yellow area. So we're going to drag the rollback bar at the top, drag the rollback bar at the bottom, and this provides me with every part between a range of this and this. Now, what can you do with this? Well, you can perform your functions just like you would in the feature tree on the parts that you've just found or searched upon or organized within assembly visualization. So if I want to control, select, and hide, I want to suppress, I can do those things. Okay. A couple of the things I want to point out here. If I wanted to make everything that is the same value the same color, I can right-click on the actual slider itself, and you're going to have an option to group identical. Okay, that will make a unique color for every unique value within there. So now again, if I wanted to see everything a particular color, I can go ahead. There's all my tags that are all the same color in this case, are all the same mass value. Notice it's trying to apply a unique color to each. Okay. A couple other things that we're able to do. Sorting, if the arrow is going up, it's sorting based upon ascending order. If it's going down, it's descending. Pretty easy to figure out there. But if I wanted to sort on multiple columns, mass first, then quantity, I could come over here, right-click on the quantity, and tell it to add to the sort hierarchy. So now it's physically sorting on both. So notice it still starts out with the lowest mass with the lowest quantity. Okay, but as I get down there, okay, quantity 2, we still got lowest mass. Okay, so you're able to sort on multiple columns. Let me make sure I got everything here. Just real quick, I want to look in here. You can control the precision. You can add this as a display state. In other words, the colors will all be applied as a display state so you can flip back to it. And I just want to point out all the properties that you have related to here. And we're going to come back to some things in here in just a few moments. But all your sustainability stuff's in here as well. Okay, so assembly visualization, it takes some getting used to. You're going to be pulling up custom properties, adding information in here. Let's go ahead and add, yeah, let's see. There's number. I don't know if there's anything here. Part numbers and so on. And again, you can fly this thing out and add as many columns as you need. Okay, so that's assembly visualization in 2011. Let's go back to my PowerPoint for a moment. Okay, assembly D-feature. I know Nate got a chance to show you D-feature for parts. I just want to take you through D-feature for assemblies real quick. There's really 5 steps to using D-feature, and the great thing about the tool is that it's able to take you step by step to get you to that final option. The first step in the assembly level is to pick which components you want to keep. Step number 2 is to set up groups so you can capture any kind of motion you want to keep in your assembly. Step number 3 allows us to pick anything else like features that I want to keep. Step 4 says definitely remove this, this, and this, and then it will complete the D-feature function. Now let's look at that live so it makes a lot more sense for you folks. Okay, very simple assembly here. D-feature can be found under the Tools menu. D-feature is really used to create parts that are going to go outside the building. There is no associativity between the original assembly and the resulting assembly. So if you're looking to take, let's say, this oil pump and put it into somebody else's assembly, but you didn't want them to have a lot of the mechanicals or a lot of the detail, they really need the outline and some basic shape information. So D-feature, when launched, will take you into this wizard-based 4-step system. So first step, start by removing any unneeded components, and they give you several options in here to help you to remove those components. I'm going to start at the very bottom because they've built in the section view tool right into this command so that I can actually do a section view to see inside the parts. I can control the section plane so that I can view and select any internals at this point. Now at the top I have choices, kind of some check boxes. Do I want to remove all internal components? Anything inside the outer volume? Or how about any small components which are a percentage of the assembly size? And that's based upon volume, not mass. Okay? Or I can just simply select what components I want to have removed. Okay? Now, if I tell it what to do with what I'm making my selection up here, in other words, I want to remove all internal components, I'm going to tell it to hide remove components, and then we'll go ahead and do an update. Okay, so it shows you immediately in the graphics area what it sees as internal components. You'll notice those 2 inside parts now disappeared. Okay, now any exceptions, in other words, I told it to remove internals, but let's say there was one of the internal components I wanted to keep. I could come over to the feature tree, find that component, let's say the inner rotor here, and tell it to keep that particular component. Okay? So it does allow you to get some of those back if there's an exception to the rule. Now, step number 2 will be used if you want to still have motion in your assembly, your resulting assembly, even though it's defeatured. The biggest and the hardest part here is you pick all the parts that are mated together to create the motion, and that's what will extract the mate group that will allow it to keep moving. Now this particular assembly does not require that, but just to give you an idea of what you would do here. Let's say I wanted this shaft to continue to rotate in this outer cover. I could select the shaft, I could select the outer cover, okay, and then I could go and pick any mates I wanted to go with it as well. Okay, by creating this group, it will automatically extract all the mates between the two, and you can pick which mates it's going to keep. Again, you don't want to send any information that you don't necessarily need them to have. So let's go ahead and hit our next option here. This is where I can tell it which features I want to keep. Okay, in this case, I definitely want to have all the holes on both sides of these parts. Okay, everything else is kind of fair game. You know, you take a look at these ribs in the front. Maybe I do, maybe I don't want them, but unless I specify it here, there's a chance that it will automatically select and defeature those particular components. Okay, if I hit next, you're going to get the removal of features, and you're going to see what the resulting assembly could look like. In this particular case, it did not get the ribs. Okay, I could tell it to remove those ribs if I wanted to at this point by making a selection. And again, I could you know, come in here and make those picks. Okay. Now that's what this last option, to remove, it gave you the best guess on what it needed. Let's see if this will remove that for me. Okay, I just told it to remove all that rib structure, and then my resulting assembly is going to look like that. Now the reality of this is in the end, we have three choices. We can store my settings for future use. In other words, I've set it up. I'm not sure I'm going to send this to the customer now, but I may go back to it. Or do I want to save the model as a separate file? This is where we would send it to an external customer, external vendor, or the last option would publish your model to 3D Content Central. This will allow you to get your data out there and used by other individuals without necessarily publishing all of the you know, art intelligence that you would typically have. So that's defeature for assemblies. There's quite a few unique tools built into that. It kind of takes over for the save as part options that we had before. It gives you a lot more control over what we're dealing with. Save as part just allowed us to do you know, solids or surfaces, but didn't really allow us to control the detail very well. Now, assembly rebuild report. We weren't able to, in previous releases, get the rebuild time of the total assembly. Okay, now we have the ability to do that through the assembly expert. A couple rules: that the rebuild must occur during the current session to generate the report. In other words, you got to open up the assembly, do a control Q to get at it. Any rebuild slower than 10 milliseconds will not show up. So not that you need to know if an assembly rebuilds that slow. Okay. And then I have a little question here, is how do I show rebuild times of every part in my assembly? And the reason I put that on there is because this is only going to show us rebuild times of the entire assembly itself. So let's take a look here. Let's see. Sorry, I just got to get the right folder. Okay, so I have this older set of files, an engine. If I go to my tools, assembly expert, one thing you will notice is it does not provide me with the ability to get the rebuild time on this assembly. because of, number one, the rebuild has to occur during the current session. So if you go to open this up and it doesn't give you the option in here to view the rebuild time, it's because the rebuild has not occurred. So let me close this. I'm going to do a Control Q for a rebuild. Okay, the system went ahead and rebuild, and now I'll go ahead and go back to my assembly expert. Now what you'll see is this exact wording. A report of the last assembly rebuild is available, showing the time taken by significant components and features. If I select the little glasses here, I'll get show my parts. Now this will show you the full rebuild time, which includes assembly features. Assembly rebuild pass is just the rebuild of the components, and assembly features is your make groups and your assembly features like fillets and welds and stuff we were showing earlier. So it does kind of break it down. But what I want to point out here is that it does not show you which parts contribute to this the most. But what it will give you is a total rebuild time for this particular assembly. Okay, so if you need to do any rebuilds, you can kind of get an idea of what it looks like. Now my question on the slide would be, how do I get the rebuild times of each component within this assembly so I know which one's contributing the most? Now we know that if we go to a single part, I can get the rebuild times. We've been doing that for years. But I would have to do that. Let's say there's 1,000 components in an assembly. How do I do that? Well, I'm going to give you the answer. And I actually just showed you the answer. It's called assembly visualization. One of the columns that you can add in assembly visualization is SolidWorks rebuild time. So inside of assembly, you can see which components take the longest to rebuild. In this case, the crankshaft takes 10.25 seconds, while everything else is 2 or under. So that will allow you to take a look, and maybe I can do something to simplify the crankshaft, or maybe there's a problem with the crankshaft. But you can go ahead and get to that individual rebuild time. Okay, let's move on here. Getting a little bit slow on time here. Speedback. The only thing I wanted to point about Speedback is there's new commands to make it easy to switch between Speedback and parent configurations. You can switch all sub-assemblies to Speedback. You can switch them one at a time. You can switch back to a parent. Okay, and then we need to talk about what sketches do in a Speedback. So let's take a look at this. If I do a file open and select my Speedback files that I'm dealing with here. Okay. Now, in this dialog, after I open it up, oh, that's not the right assembly here, I apologize. I need the assembly right here. In the open dialog, you're going to see a new option to use Speedback. What that will do is any sub-assemblies that are within this assembly that you're opening that are Speedpacked will now open as the Speedback configuration. Okay. Now this particular assembly didn't have any. I was going to actually create one here. So let's open the assembly, and I just want to go through the process of creating a Speedback. Okay, we go to the configuration manager. We right click and say add Speedback. In this particular case, I can select the faces that I want to include in the Speedback, which for me are just going to be the mating faces. Okay, and accept it. Now what you'll see is as I mouse over, the only thing that's included or in the graphics is the Speedpacked surfaces that I've selected. Now let's go back to the upper level assembly, and I can right click on that particular component now, and I should have an option. I gotta right click on the right one to use Speedback. Now it recognizes which ones have Speedbacks and don't. So if you right click on a subassembly and you don't see this option, it doesn't have a Speedback. But if I select use Speedback, it now loads the Speedback edition of that particular assembly. Okay. Now the opposite of that, well, first of all, notice the icon in the feature tree. It shows the Speedback icon to let you know that's what's loaded. Okay. If I right click on it, the opposite of that is set Speedback to parent. Now here's how I'm taking this new feature. It seems to me like it's going towards how lightweight works. Be able to swap between Speedback and fully resolved very easily. So if I say set Speedback to parent, it loads it fully resolved. Now let's say I had 10 sub-assemblies that were all Speedback that it was already open. If I right click at the upper level, I can select use Speedback, and any sub-assemblies that have Speedback will then be loaded. Okay, so what they've done in 2011, they haven't really enhanced what Speedback is, but how we can flip between Speedback and fully resolved back to Speedback. Kind of feels a lot like lightweight components. Okay. The last thing I want to close with today is just clearing up basically 5 years worth of SolidWorks changes. It seems like every year they've changed how we add colors, where we put decals, how we store information about scenes, lights, cameras, appearances. There's been interface after interface, sometimes on the right-click menu, sometimes over here, sometimes on the task pane. They really haven't stuck to one particular method. Well, they now seem to have everything organized the way they want it. They've titled it the Display Manager. They've also brought Photo View 360 into the fold here in 2011. It's embedded in SolidWorks. All right, and what we need to do is just kind of lay out some of this this new Display Manager, get you comfortable with what's really going on here. So let's go back to SolidWorks for a moment. And open up an example. Something very simple here. Now, next to our configuration manager, we're going to have a tab that's here to stay. That's titled the Display Manager. It was titled Appearances. It was titled other things in the past. But now it is titled the Display Manager. The Display Manager will contain all your scenes, lights, cameras, walkthrough information. It will also, notice there's like 3 little sub buttons here. You can view all your decals and your decal library, and you can get to all of your appearances. Now, it warrants some conversation about the difference. What exactly is an appearance? An appearance has nothing to do with the background anymore of your image, with the floor or the reflections. It has to do with how the part looks as it pertains to a material. So does it look shiny like a polished material? Is it dull? Is it textured? An appearance is related directly to the parts themselves. Now, a scene is the actual background, the floor, the reflectivity, what is reflecting onto the parts. There's a lot more that goes into a scene. They've also unified my lights. So if I right click on a light in the light folder, I can turn it off in SolidWorks. If I had PhotoView 360 on, I can also specify which ones are on in 360, off in 360, on in SolidWorks, off in SolidWorks. One location to go to manage lights. Okay. Back to appearances just for a moment. Previously, we didn't have all the controls that we had in PhotoWorks years ago for appearances. They've moved everything else as it relates to the appearances of a surface. They've moved everything into PhotoView 360 in the Display Manager in 2011. And you'll see here in a moment as I get in and add some appearances, the changes that you're going to be able to see. Now, a couple of the things under appearances, you're going to have the ability to sort appearances that exist in the assembly or part level. We can sort by hierarchy. Now, what this actually does is it shows you, it goes to every part and it shows you the appearances that have been added at those levels and the hierarchy. We know that a face overrides a feature and a feature overrides a part. So it sorts them in that method. If I wanted to change the color of a particular face, okay, I can just double click on the item that I find and I can change the color here. And you can kind of see the reflectivity changing a little bit. Okay, so that hierarchy is listed. Now, we can do it historically, how it was added. This is, in general, the order in which colors were changed. Notice the black was the last color to be added. Or we can look at them in alphabetical order, which most of these just have generic colors. But this is a nice way to see how the colors were applied along the way. Now, if I expand the color, it tells you the part that it's applied to as well. Okay. Now, how do I add an appearance or change an appearance? Well, off to the right, we have our task pane, which essentially allows us to get into the library of standard appearances. Again, this is to view any appearances that exist. This is really just a library. So if I wanted to change an appearance, I just drag that appearance onto the component that I want, and I'm presented with choices. Do I want to apply it to the face? Do I want to apply it to the imported body, the entire body, the part, or the assembly? Okay, let's go right to the assembly here. Now, once that appearance is applied, okay, we're going to be able to notice this. Okay, here's the latest appearance that was added in the order that it was added. Okay, and I can modify it from there. Again, appearance is only the reflectivity on the parts themselves. Now, let's go to turning on PhotoView 360 and see what happens. Because when PhotoView 360 is on, I have a little bit more control over some of the things as it relates to appearances. Let's drag my metallic gold, same way we did before, and we're going to apply this to the assembly. Now, once it's been applied, okay, we know we can get at it through our hierarchy here. I'm sorry, go to history. And here's my metallic gold. If I edit the appearance, it's 360 on. I have the ability to change the color. Now, when I change the color, it's not changing the reflectivity parameters. It's just the color of that material that you've applied, the appearance. Now, there is an advanced section in here, which is available when you have PhotoView 360, where we can get into things like adding surface finish, adding other illumination values, okay, adding images to the surface. Now, those options weren't available in 2011. Those options were always available in PhotoWorks, but as they started to develop PhotoView, they were only available in that product and not available inside of SolidWorks. Well, now everything that was in PhotoWorks is now brought forward into PhotoView 360, and you can now modify those individually. So if I wanted to change the reflection amount for these surfaces, I can drag that down, and you can see how it changes my model dynamically. A couple other changes I want to point out in 2011. In PhotoView 360, there's now a preview window for your rendering, just like there was in PhotoWorks. What it does, it will allow you to create this separate window. It might look kind of fuzzy over the web here, but this window can be as big as you need it to be. It will render dynamically as you make changes to your model. So if you want to make changes to the appearance and so on, it will automatically update in a nice little preview window off the corner. You want to rotate your model, you'll notice that it'll continue to render. It's a way of previewing your rendering ahead of time, and PhotoWorks had that for quite some time now. Other things that you're going to see, if I go to my scene lights and cameras, we do have some control over the scenes. The scenes are the background, the floor, and what actually reflects onto the part itself. You can notice there is some reflection on this part. There's actually a scene or an image that's reflecting on there. We can control through Edit Scene the background image that's being used. Maybe in this case I want the courtyard. Again, that shows what's reflecting onto the part. Now the environment is something a little bit different. What you want to envision here is everything that's reflecting onto the part is kind of a big giant bubble that has has some sort of scene tied to it, and we can change that environment. There's several different environments in here. These HDR images. Here's a kitchen. Now, by applying this, it changes, and it's kind of hard to changes the reflective images coming off your parts. I guess the best thing you can take from this conversation, I know it's 1 o'clock at this point, is that we now have a display manager that's going to manage everything. I suggest you get used to dealing with your lights and cameras and everything in this manner. When you go to the task pane where it says appearances, scenes, and decals, treat that as a library. That's your library of storing your scenes, storing your decals, storing your new appearances. Okay. Now that's all I had for the webinar today. If there's not any more questions, we'll go ahead and cut it off. Please stay tuned, and I think on the 8th, Nate will be coming through with another session. Again, he's picking more features in 2011 and taking you through them front to back, and we'll pick up then. Thanks for your time.